I've lived long enough to see the Berlin Wall falling, and I have learned to understand what the Soviet bloc and the communism around the world, what kind of devastation it has brought to the people, and therefore it is disheartening to see the reversing of that trend for the communist-controlled China to start influencing and closing up Hong Kong.
Hong Kong's freedoms are still being eroded by the Chinese Communist Party, and some Vancouverites rightfully have had enough. I'm Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and this past Sunday I attended a peaceful rally hosted by the Vancouver Society in support of Democratic Movement. Many Canadians gathered in the blazing heat at the Vancouver Art Gallery in Vancouver, BC. They want to give a voice to so many of the concerns that we here at Rebel News also share. While Canada allows China's Huawei Chief Executive Officer Meng Wanzhou to live in a Vancouver mansion like a princess, many Chinese Canadians held signs on Sunday to go to bat for our two Michaels so they could be freed. They also held signs for more who have been wrongfully held against their will and arrested under China's government. Signs raising awareness about saving the Muslim Uyghurs currently being held in concentration camps. Also other signs in regards to Hong Kong's media tycoon and the founder of Apple Daily newspaper, Jimmy Lai. Jimmy Lai is a popular pro-democracy advocate who was arrested last week and charged for foreign collusion. According to BBC News, Jimmy and 9 other activists were obtained under a new national security law imposed by China this past June. Jimmy reportedly sent out a warning requesting that protesters be more careful for fear that China will use the new law to undertake a broad crackdown on Hong Kong's pro-democracy advocates as well as media figures. But that didn't stop these brave protesters from coming out on Sunday. They listened to speeches and they chanted for freedoms. One speech was given by Conservative MP Kenny Chiu of the Steveston-Richmond East riding. After Chiu's speech, I asked him some questions as well. I wanted to know what he thought of Hong Kong's freedom and matters of how Canadians' government is interacting with them, and as well as what our stance with the Chinese Communist Party should be. Here's what Kenny Chiu had to say. Why should non-Chinese Canadians be interested in all this? Why should it really matter?
Well, there are 300,000 Canadian passport holders living in Hong Kong right now. Many of them are ethnic Chinese or non-ethnic Chinese. And Hong Kong has been an international city since pretty much 150 years ago. And then at the same time, over the last many decades, there are immigrants coming from Hong Kong living in Canada. There are an estimated 600,000 Canadians that are of Hong Kong origin right now. So the two places are tied in terms of personnel. But at the same time, Hong Kong has a historical footprint in Canada. Every time when I go visit Hong Kong, I made an effort to visit one of the graves of the cemetery of the Allied soldiers. Many of them are unknown. There are over 300 Canadian soldiers that died defending Hong Kong in 1941. And then, as I was just mentioning, found something out yesterday. Yesterday we celebrated the 75th anniversary of the victory over Japan. In other words, it's the end of the Second World War. Little do people know that Hong Kong was actually liberated by a Canadian officer. So he set foot yesterday, 75 years ago, in Hong Kong, accepting the surrendering and also liberating the POW camps.
Wow.
Many Canadians were jailed in those. And not only that, he actually was a Canadian of Chinese ethnicity. He's a Chinese Canadian, born in Canada, William Law, and he and he's the first British Commonwealth ally officers ever served. And not only that, he decided to finish his law degree in Oxford and then move himself to Hong Kong and practice and live there and pass away in 2012. So there is this historical link that the Commonwealth Canada has with Hong Kong. And we do business there. We tour there. We want to see Hong Kong as a beachhead that will actually bring positive opening changes to China, to Greater China. And what we are seeing right now is the reverse of that. And that's why we are so concerned. I guess I've lived long enough to see the Berlin Wall falling. And I have learned to understand what the Soviet bloc and the communism around the world, what kind of devastation it has brought to the people. And therefore it is disheartening to see the reversing of that trend for the communist-controlled China to start influencing and closing up Hong Kong with, for example, its latest, it's the National Security Law, also known as NSL. It's very overreaching. What I said there at the rally could have been used as something that would actually render me guilty of the NSL as well.
Yeah.
So as Canadians, that's why we have to speak up, and now it's the time for that.
Now is the time. It was a good turnout today. And speaking of, Canadians being imprisoned in China, has a Liberal government done enough for our two Michaels?
I'm a Conservative opposition MP, so in the British Westminster system, I have to oppose them. But partisanship aside, I think there are still a lot of things that they could have done. And I sat there as I prepare myself before today. I measure, like, from this point, 7 kilometers away, it's Meng Wanzhou living in her $4 or $5 million mansion, making dumplings. But when our two Michaels, we don't even know where the whereabout is. Accordingly, Michael Kovic, he was trying to get a pair of reading glasses, and he was denied that right for many months until recently. Our council officials was denied visiting. I think it's still being denied with the excuse of COVID. So the government of Canada, we need to advocate for these our Canadians, and the two are just two of many that are incarcerated in China right now. And China responds well to strength, and they despise weakness. And unfortunately, the Justin Trudeau Liberal government right now is exhibiting exactly that weakness, and therefore it's not being effective, and China is not listening.
Well, thank you so much. What would you have to say for someone who wants to get involved in this cause for the first time? Where should they go? Where should they look?
Well, I think it's important to actually let your member of parliament know. We still have a democracy in Canada. Unfortunately, parliament has not been sitting. So write to your MP, write to your senators, and make sure they understand what you care about. They are your representative.
So when do you think Canada should say enough is enough and put more pressure on China's government? Is that time now? I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. If you would like to learn more about how Trudeau's pro-communist ideology is like a virus continuously putting Canadians at risk, head to ChinaVirusBook.com and grab your copy of Ezra Levant's book called China Virus today.